Hey, guys. Welcome. Happy Thursday night. I hope you're doing great. I have a very sunny disposition to kind of mask over what we'll be talking about this evening, right? School safety and the aspects of school safety with Melissa Mason, who is here representing herself, but she sits on the new Hanover County School Board. Hey, Melissa.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sloan.
Absolutely. You've been raising a whole lot of hell where you are.
I tried.
We wouldn't have it any other way, actually. Speaking of Hellraisers, it's my friend, Danny Ricciani, parent, Hotworks owner. So if you ever work out, you got to try Hotworks. It's a love-hate thing, right?
Yeah, I think working out is in general.
Absolutely, yes, the thing we should do, but but Danny, we've talked about this very much. I mean, you're a new Hanover County parent. We've talked about the grooming in schools. We've talked about the larger issue of school safety. So we're going to kind of get into that and speak some generals and specifics. And, there's a lot that you guys don't know. So I'm going to shed some light on this. But before I do, Melissa, you guys have just initiated a new policy about school safety. Did I read that correctly?
Well, we have a new transgender policy that we have put into effect, I believe, where we changed the wording from middle school students may play on the whatever sport they identify. We've changed that to they must participate in the sport of the gender on their birth certificate.
Okay.
So that's been the biggest change. We've had a lot of pushback from it, but I think it was a really positive change because we need to be protecting all of our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So I covered the story of a teen that was just pummeled with a ball right to the forehead and has given her long-term, injury and damage, had to come off the volleyball team for the season by, a guy playing on the volleyball team. And it is, after the age of 13, it gets very, very dangerous to do that. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely a school safety issue. But here's how I break it out, guys. The way that we think about school safety is two ways. First of all, students need to be protected from other students. It's sad, but it's just kind of that way, right? And then students, of course, need to be protected from predator teachers. That has not been done. It's not being done, and it's going to be done, right? Because we're going to change some policies and we're going to hold some people accountable here in North Carolina. So I'm going to give you some data and facts so we can center our discussion around that. A state school board presentation was out today that presented the crime numbers. And I want to present this to you guys for your consideration. So this is what you're looking at is the actual crimes that is counted up at the State Board of Ed. Okay. So this is what they're taking into account. So you can plainly see that this is the big stuff, right? It's not like, giving somebody a wedgie, horseplay, or any of that stuff. This is serious stuff. So just feast your eyes on the crimes that they're counting here. Okay. So overall, these crimes are up 17% over pre-pandemic. So that would be 2018, 2019, 17%. Now, it was couched by the state superintendent as this. Well, people are seeing that, school districts are seeing that all over the country. We don't give a damn. We live in North Carolina. We expect more from our elected officials. We want the problem solved. Now, just to give you perspective, okay, this is a 2021, 22 crime rates. Okay. 7.51 per thousand people affected by crimes. North Carolina, 4.2 per 1,000. And the America's average is 4.1,000. So we're looking at almost, I guess, double, right? Approaching double in the schools. So we don't really care if everyone in the country is seeing, every school district in the country is seeing an uptick in violence and in these crimes, the crimes I listed. This is outrageous, purely outrageous. Now, what is the state relying on? And Catherine Truitt, what is she touted to be the panacea for punishment in schools? Something called social emotional learning. Okay, Danny, I love when you raise the one eyebrow. When Danny raises one eyebrow, look out. Okay, look out. I'm glad you love it. So I'm glad you raised the eyebrow. And I knew the eyebrow would be coming up tonight, Danny. So for your viewing pleasure, I'm going to show you the discussion that James Lindsay and I had. James Lindsay is one of the foremost thinkers in social emotional learning and grooming and all this, where we expose this, because I want you to see just for yourself how this discussion went and what it is. So permit me to show you guys this, if I can play it. And how do we do that? Okay. And anytime now. And let's go. Okay. Well, I'm having technical difficulties, but Danny, I'm going to show you in a second some of the surveys that were asked. So that for discipline, social emotional learning, and it's just what it sounds like, a bunch of crap. That is the way that this is going to be solved. Melissa, you've written a lot about social emotional learning. Tell Danny a little bit about, and tell our audience what it is, what it does, what it purports to do.
Oh, there's not enough time, Sloan. It's just so big. It really is. I talk with people about this all the time. It's huge. It comes across as this way to get our kids to be able to work well together, to be job ready, career ready, and teach them the skills they need to have, empathy and to be those amazing hard workers, when really that's not really the undercurrent of it. And if you look at some of the different components of it, like self-awareness, where they're talking about identities, it pulls in your gender identity, it pulls in your sexual orientation, it pulls in all of these things that are absolutely inappropriate to be talking about with our kids, because that's not the school's job. And so they've pulled in some of this comprehensive sex education along with social emotional learning to really, and I know we love to use this word, indoctrinate our kids, and tell them, well, school is a safer place than home is. So share this information with your teachers, because your parents won't understand. So social emotional learning has this face of wonderfulness, but really is very insidious and very Marxist in its roots.
Well, so anything Marxist usually is coated with a lot of sugar, makes it easier to swallow, tastes better, right? And then it never ends up being what you expect it to be. Can I just say something real quick it's festering in me? The superintendent of the state said, well, it's just up everywhere, right, Sloan? Is that what I heard you say? Mm-hmm. That was said?
Yeah.
Okay. So
yes.
Here's my question. If I were to have ever said that to a boss, well, everybody else is not doing well, so there you go, I would have been without a job back, in the corporate world. It has no bearing on the rest of the world. He is the superintendent or she, I'm sorry, I don't even know.
For misgendered, damn you.
Who can keep up anymore? But I mean, if you are not focused on your state and not just dismissive, sorry, can't speak tonight, dismissive about it, are you in the right job? You should be worrying about your state and worrying that I've got to get this down, not, well, it's up everywhere. Oh, all right. It blows my mind. Sorry. It was just, it was really getting to me.
It's better actually than blaming a predecessor, which is it's typical. It's typical for her to blame her predecessor. So I think it's a shade better than that, but not much better. And she has announced, Catherine Truitt has just announced that she wants 6 more years. Guys, she will be running. She wants 6 more years. And 6 more years of incompetence and the way that we can't really afford to have that happen. So I'm going to show you this on the other. Let's see if I can show you this on the other screen. It's, this is really important. Let's see if we can get it going. Okay. This is an explanation of exactly what this is and what we're talking about.
Is a huge problem with this. So what you're going to be looking at is stuff that's going on for elementary schools. But one feature is constant
Oh, you're not seeing
examination.
You're still not seeing it, are you?
This is one feature.
Okay.
Of this program.
Oh,
where
okay,
it's
guys, hold on 1 second. Let me see. Let me give myself one more chance. If not, I mean, you can tell it's pretty dang important to me that I show you guys this. But yeah, I mean, we're going to explain it. And the reason we're going to explain it for the audience to hear is that, look, this is what right now the state level wants you to believe is going to stop violence in schools. It's going to stop all of this crime, and it couldn't be any further from the truth. Once you're able to see it, you will you'll see for yourself. Hang on 1 second. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's see. Can you see that now?
Sorry, so I'm going to blow this up to see if you guys can see it a little bit better. But this is just one exercise. So what you're looking at, you guys, this is a teacher's guide, okay? So this isn't the actual thing, but it's asking students to journal, dialogue their journal, and visual representation. And this is ad nauseum. It's really, self-confessions, it's your family origins, etc. And it's got exercises where it really singles kids out. Right? How many of you disagree? How many of you agree? Using peer pressure as a sickening lever to try to change the baseline values of students. Students are a captive audience, as we know. I'm going to show you a couple more and just kind of get your input because I've got some real doozies. So this is social emotional learning. In my summation, social emotional learning is far more dangerous than just straight up critical race theory. It is ridiculously manipulative. There's a lot of studies where psychiatrists have done that, right? Where they've really steered people astray. That's kind of what I see happening here, especially with young children. So here's what we're looking at. This is asking kids, do I have questions about my face, hair, chest, and body? This is a 7th grade class here, guys. And by the way, these are questions that are shared with the rest of the class. So getting children to confess very personal things about themselves, it's not just to get to know each other better, you guys. It's purely manipulative. This is in Orange County, by the way, in Chapel Hill. But this is by no means just them. Questions I have about growing up are, check all that are apply. Why am I changing? Does everyone change the same way? And when is it okay to kiss someone? Okay. And then the last one I want to share, this goes into the interrogations. You guys, interrogations are this is the crux of social emotional learning. Again, it's done in every stinking class, you guys. Math, whatever it is. Okay, it's asking questions. Here we go. About my friends. My best friend's name is. My best friend thinks that I am. Right? Something my friend does that worries me. My mom's name is. Today I would describe my relationship with my mom as, so this is grooming. What you're looking at is grooming. It is getting incriminating information about students in order to use that as leverage. Make no mistake about it. This is information, by the way, which is shared with the rest of the class. This is straight out of Mao. I'm sorry. This is a Maoist type of educational program. James, what did you think of what I just showed you?
I mean, so it just kind of, it reinforces a lot of the things I already think, having seen some of this directly. The comment that I made earlier, I want to strengthen something about it. Teachers who are doing social emotional learning in these capacities should not just be fired, they should probably be fined or arrested. They are practicing psychology in an uncontrolled setting without a license, which should be overwhelmingly illegal I think it is illegal in all 50 states. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever that this should be occurring with children in like I said, in uncontrolled environments. Typically, the kinds of investigations that you're seeing happening that you just presented are the kind of thing that a therapist, either working with an individual child or adult maybe, or a small group of people might try to work through.
Okay. All right, guys. So yeah, you can see here, and we're going to bring ourselves back on the screen. The one question it didn't show is, how do I feel about getting hair on my body? How do I feel? And of course they're asking, are you gay? Are you trans? Are you sure? So forcing children to out themselves, this matters. We're going to talk about why it matters, but this is the warning signs of grooming. This is from the clearinghouse in America for grooming and for preventing sex trafficking and abuse. It says grooming is, it is the way that predators get continued access to their victims. And it relies upon certain factors. Victim selection. Abusers also often observe possible victims and select them based on ease of access. If you're a teacher, cannot imagine any easier place to access. Gaining access and isolating the victim. Melissa, that sounds a whole hell of a lot like the grooming or the gender plan that we're going to be talking about. Finding a reason to be alone. A lot of these abusers actually are coaches. That's one thing we found in our research, which was disturbing, but it makes sense, right? Trust development and keeping secrets. Again, it sounds like the program we're going to tell you. And, desensitization and discussion of sexual topics. What do you think that is that we just watched? By the way, again, I'm going to tell you, social emotional learning is presented as the panacea, the cure-all to stop violence in schools. And it's actually grooming children. This is the bridge for something else I'm going to present. Attempt to make their behavior seem natural. If you're asking these outlandish questions that, quite frankly, Danny, I know you would punch somebody probably in the mouth. If they were asking Olivia, how do you feel about getting pubic hair? And yet, a government teacher can ask about this under the umbrella of social emotional learning. Now, this is a bridge to where I'm going. There are at least 50 teachers who are right now in the queue for prosecution for sex crimes against children and sexual things, crimes, according to Catherine Truitt. What happens is this. The procedure is a school reports this to the state. The state either revokes their license, suspends it, or whatever. What you're looking at is a dude who is prosecuted. He's found guilty, gets 30 months of probation. When you look at the state's registry of teachers, he still has a teacher's license in good standing. It's unreal. Here's another one. This guy, teacher, they're showing or alleging 10 years of abusing children. He voluntarily surrendered his license. He's in prison now awaiting trial. Voluntarily surrendered it. And yet, he still has a current license. Danny, this is the first time you're hearing any of this. What do you think about this?
I'm horrified, disgusted. There's so much wrong about all of that. They talk about protecting our kids. They talk about, making sure they're safe, and those questions of, my relationship with my mom or this, that, and the other. It's a crock. It has nothing to do with protecting our kids, and it is full on abuse. And the simple fact that they are not yanking those licenses away from those teachers at lightning pace is frightening to me, because the question that comes up is why? Why wouldn't you? If you truly are interested in protecting our children, school was supposed to be a safe place. That if something was wrong, you could go to your teacher and tell them, and then they would help you. Now, oh my God, you be careful what you say to some of these teachers. Not every teacher out there is bad, and I want to preface that. Not every teacher is bad, but when we have
I think Danny's frozen because it's upsetting. So, yeah, but Melissa, I mean, again, you're one of the key thinkers as far as a school board member. I mean, you ran on this. And, you had moderates that said, oh, my God, please don't run on this. Please don't run on this. Don't talk about this. You did. And you said, I'm not going to stop doing it because you feel so strongly about this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the whole point, I agree with Danny, like school should be a safe place for kids to go. And it just isn't. It isn't because of the bullying. It isn't because of the teachers. And it isn't because we're relying on social emotional learning, which has these restorative justice practices. And none of this is helping these kids. It's horrifying. It's horrifying. And I can't sit back and just let it happen. I have kids that go to school too. So.
Yeah. I mean, we all have, a horse in this race. I mean, even those without kids, I'll tell you, if you care about the future of this state, and here's what I always say, look, those of us who are, I mean, I'm 25. Okay. So I don't have anything to worry about, but those of us who are 40, we think, in another 20 years, you may be going to the doctor a little bit more frequently than you are now. Do you want children who have been subjected to all of this violence and this caring for you? No, you do not. So it affects, more than just healthcare. It's long-term ramifications for the future of this state. Now I'm going to play this
question.
See? Okay. So Glenn Beck featured our work. Sadly, he had to do a full hour on our work here in North Carolina. And this really highlights New Hanover County.
Part of one public school system's gender support plan. This is to be given to kids as early as kindergarten. Notice the box, students assigned sex at birth. And then the other box right next to it for the student's gender identity. Now, this goes on to establish a point of contact for the student to have people at the school the student can get counsel from regarding their gender identity. It specifies whether the child's family is aware of any of this and what the school should do if the parents aren't aware or aren't supportive. Let me just say this. If you had a family member, let's say a creepy uncle, that had your third grader alone and said, listen, we're just going to talk about things like your gender and sex, and we're not going to tell mom and dad. That's a family member. That family member would be lucky to escape my house alive. This is an entire system doing this to all of our kids. Teachers are actively discussing gender identity to kids as early as 5 years old. Not only that, keeping it secret from the parents is part of the plan. Let me ask you something. What couldn't you convince a 5-year-old? If you wanted to, if you had some kind of ulterior motive, couldn't you convince a 5-year-old damn near anything?
So, y'all had some problems in the past in New Hanover County with teachers allegedly not, being forthcoming about abuse, principal superintendents allegedly not being forthcoming, and just of abuse. And you're not alone. I mean, there's other counties, Guilford County, Charlotte, Mecklenburg, Wake County. And so given the history of New Hanover County, why in the hell was this program ever brought into the school system by your Title IX coordinator and then defended?
I wish I had an answer for you. I mean, what they tell us is that it is no longer being used unless a parent requests it. But why it was implemented to begin with, I can't tell you. I was not a member of the board at that time.
Right. I mean, to have a support animal, being a teacher, talking alone about sexuality is a recipe for disaster. Danny, what do you think as a parent, if this happened to you and you found out your child, I mean, this is grooming. How do we know it's grooming? Because the leading organization for grooming and for sex trafficking said so. What do you think?
So when our daughter was very young, I would say to her, if anyone talks to you about this, if anyone touches you in places that you feel uncomfortable, or touches you when you just don't feel uncomfortable, you need to tell me. You need to tell me. You need to talk. That's what parents do. We want to protect our children, and we instruct them that if someone says to them things like Glenn Beck just described, keep this between us, it's a secret, that's a red flag. And that's how we raised our daughter, is to tell us. And now we've got these people in that have power over these children that are saying, don't tell your parents. What do you think a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, 7-year-old is going to do? You're in a position of power. That is clear abuse. And you are instructing a child to not share something with their parents. If it's so great and awesome, why wouldn't you want to include the parents? Bring them in. If you want to hide it from a parent, that's a warning. It's a warning flag.
Well, right. And it's not just Danny saying it, Melissa or Sloan. It's this organization. And again, I just want to point this out. Isolating the victim. So when you're one-on-one with that adult, that is grooming. This is a warning sign that something bad is going to happen. That's the way that, law enforcement looks at it. Desensitization to talking about sexual concepts. You have that. And then you have keeping secrets. Abusers attempt to gain trust of a potential victim through gifts, attention, sharing secrets, and other means to make them feel they have a caring relationship and train them to keep that relationship a secret. So
infuriating.
It is if you have a blueprint on how to groom, how to sexually groom and take advantage of victims, there it is. And again, it's not just New Hanover, it's Charlotte, Mecklenburg, it's obviously Orange County, which I wrote about, and it's happening a lot. And again, I haven't heard the state say jack about it. When you look at the structure, and I want to tell everybody this, North Carolina is different from Virginia, okay, in that it's set up differently. So in Virginia, the governor comes in, he brings his own superintendent, and then he brings his own school board members that have to be approved, obviously, by the legislature, etc. In North Carolina, it's completely different. The legislature statutorily is responsible for carrying out the duty of the Constitution. In North Carolina, the Constitution says every child is entitled to a sound basic education. So the legislature funds it. They make the rules for it that they delegate now to the state school board and to the superintendent. So the legislature has been kicking the can down the road. Everything that you see, everything that's being permitted, I just want to tell you, it's brought to us by the Republicans. They've been in charge of education for 20 years. And so I don't mean to say they're ushering this in, but by not doing something about it or putting up bills and it never seems to make its way onto the floor for a vote. That's actually what's happening. And so we need to start holding our legislatures accountable, right? The issues that we're talking about should have bipartisan support. Certainly, removing teachers off the roster of licensed teachers. Here's the excuse that she gave. Truitt. Superintendent Truitt says, I think we're doing a pretty good job, quite frankly. And there's only one person in charge of all this, and we're just going to have to get more budget. Meanwhile, she's asking for money for programming that has nothing to do with literacy. And she's given her staff 30% raises over the last 2 years. 30%. I mean, they're making the average salary up there is $150,000 a year, while our teachers receive paltry salaries and while no one is at the wheel. Here's why it matters, guys. Background checks, Danny, they are not mandated in every school district, and they're not mandated in any private schools. And that means this SOB that has a free and clear teacher's license could conceivably go to a private school or another public school. They look in the database, say, fine, you've been certified for 15 years. Great, you're hired. And it has happened before. Melissa, I mean, it's a state. There's got to be a way, right, that the state and the districts work together. Tell us about this new bill, because there's a new bill that's coming out. Oh, one more thing I want to show you is this is from the Department of Education. This is best practices, you guys. This is what the state should be doing. The state should be investigating every case that comes before them of abuse, not just the district. The district does this investigation by and large, the state, and they need to monitor statewide criminal justice, public safety, and teacher licensing databases. That's what they should be doing.
Yeah. So there's a few bills. Which one were you? Because I know that there's the Parents' Bill of Rights that they're trying to get through. I think there's concern it might not make it through. I believe it made it through the Senate. It might not make it through the House.
Senate, correct. Here's the bill we're talking about. So Catherine Truitt last week brought attention to a bill that, I mean, I strongly support half of it. It says that, look, if you sexually abuse a child in school, there will be felony enhancements. There's already a felony for it, but it'd be an enhancement, right? And get this, if schools fail within 5 days to report this to the state, they can be charged for a felony, a superintendent, principal, HR person, a felony.
I guess where's the accountability for the state? In my opinion, where's that accountability? If our school districts, if our schools, if our superintendents are doing their job, and they're reporting this within a reasonable amount of time, I mean, due process and all of that, there should not be a penalty for the districts. The state needs to be held accountable for not moving it forward.
I can see. Okay. Well, we've interviewed, school board districts all across the state, and they're all doing their job. Listen, nobody wants scumbags out of the classroom more than these superintendents and these principals. They don't like it. They don't want it. So they're doing their job. But they're like, look, we sent that, and they're getting pissed. We sent, so-and-so's record up there. We thought he's going to have a suspended license. And to our stunned amazement, he doesn't. So superintendents are really mad about this. And they're like, well, wait a minute. If we send our paperwork, we do our due diligence, and it gets lost in the shuffle, we're going to have to find a lawyer to defend us against a felony when the state isn't doing anything. What the hell?
Yeah, so, that's fair at all.
So, Danny, what I did is I looked up in California in 2021. I took the first 15 teachers I saw in news reports who had been charged with indecent liberties with minors, etc. Out of those 15, 12 had either been revoked or suspended in California. Like that. In North Carolina, the state superintendent thinks that a full trial should be given and fully adjudicated. What do you think about that?
I'm sorry, if you're asking me, I lost connectivity for a second. I just heard the last little bit of your question.
So what do you think about, a school district does its full investigation, complete, and they send the documentation, and it's very likely that a teacher has done something, wrong toward a student, and they surrender their license. I mean, what do you think about them having the ability to go from district to district, and then the superintendent brushes it off like, because it falls into what you were saying before, where it's just that cavalier attitude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like, what's the point of having laws if the state isn't going to follow its own laws, and if it's not going to, have the bite to its bark? You can sit here and you can tell and before I lost connectivity, for a minute or so, I heard you talk about the individual school boards and districts and superintendents and everybody being held responsible by the state. And Melissa brought it up. Well, what about the state's, responsibility in that? It sounds great that they're going to hold people accountable, but it sounds like another issue of, rules for thee, but not for me situation. And that doesn't fix anything. If the head of the snake is the problem, then cutting off the tail doesn't fix it.
Yeah. No, exactly. So, getting back to these surveys, I'm going to put some of them up so we can kind of talk about them and see them. How harmful is it to, let's say, out a child and their sexuality before they're actually ready to do that and they're being tricked into it?
So I don't know that we brought this up, and I don't go around saying, "Hi, I'm Danny, I'm gay." That's not an introduction that I do. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to me. It's just my life. It's who I am. Whatever. I will tell you that it took me years, decades to come to that, decision to say I'm gonna live my life. I was in my early 30s before I decided I have to live my life. I can't stay in the closet. The fear in early 30s, successful in my career, making good money, having my own home, supporting myself, and the fear in my early 30s of what I could potentially lose, family, friends, just that fear and anxiety was at some point debilitating. For an adult, what do you think you're going to do to this child when you are forcing them out of that closet and you're making them say something that A, they might not be ready to talk about, or B, they might just be a tomboy, or it might be a boy that likes to play with Barbies who's a boy, who's wants to be a boy. You can't make that decision for them. You can't tell somebody this is the gender you are at this age because of how they're acting. By you telling a child or guiding them to the gender that they are, is you doing the exact thing that you're saying you want to do, which is let them pick their own gender, but you're not. You're forcing them into the gender that you believe that they should be. You are assigning something to them, and this is the part that blows my mind, Sloan. These groups out there are so contradictory in this, oh, we love everybody, except if you don't agree with us, then we hate you. Then you don't love everybody. It just blows my mind. It's dangerous to tell a child their gender, to force them out before they are ready. Not to mention the mistake as you as an adult could make in harming that. Suicide rates could increase, depression, anxiety, issues within the family. There's a whole storm of issues that could come from that.
Well, absolutely. I was trying to find out the particular survey, but I will tell you, there's a couple of surveys that ask, what's your sexuality? They find 3 or 4 different ways to ask you that question. And then they'll ask a follow-up question. How many hours per day are you alone? Are you alone after school? Do you have a gun in the house? I mean, you can kind of do the math on this and say, wow, okay, this is, this kid has a gun. They're never home alone, and et cetera. And I will not victimize that child. So, I mean, a lot of the questions, quite frankly, they ask are so invasive. You have to say, wow, would I want one of the 50 people now awaiting trial, would I have wanted for them to give my child that survey? Melissa, you've been really fighting these surveys. I mean, are you seeing that too? Or is that an argument that you're hearing from parents?
I know that there are definitely parents that are very concerned about these surveys for a variety of reasons. When we talk about these surveys and that they're anonymous, it feels very data mining. Why are you gathering this information? What are you using it for? What is the purpose of this? And who's going to see this? And a lot of it seems to be, how do we further implement some of the things that we want to implement? Now, we're still digging and searching and trying to work through, these survey policies. The survey policy that we have. But it's very concerning just to me personally as a parent. What happens in my house is not the business of the school district. It really isn't. Nothing crazy is happening here, but it isn't anybody's business regardless.
Yeah, exactly. It is. It does feel very data mining-esque. And it is. I mean, it looks to me like they're developing the foundation upon which they will build, this social credit scoring, which is extremely upsetting. And you need, before you build the algorithms, you need the big data for that. So big data, begets algorithms, begets machine learning. And that's how all of this stuff was done. So that's a very, very big concern. But I want to show you some of these questionnaires, just so you can kind of have a feel for what this is. Let's see. Yeah. So when we look at CASEL social emotional learning, so you're going to see right here, engaging in identity exploration. So again, this has nothing to do with discipline whatsoever. And, the state's reliance on this probably explains the precipitous rise in violence. If you're relying on this to attenuate violence, you're up a creek. Grounding and affirming cultural heritage. I don't know how that's supposed to discipline students. Recognize how everything is interconnected across diverse contents. This reminds me of a really bad Pink Floyd concert. Across diverse contexts, interconnected, just insane. Okay, so here you go. Here's one. This is from Johnson County Schools. What is your religious preference? Now, right there, I mean, again, there's a lot of ignorance, in this world, unfortunately. Somebody might not like Buddhists, Hindus, Muslim. I mean, you don't want this in the hands of the wrong teacher. How do you think we have achieved equality in this world? Heaven help you if you answer the wrong question or answer it incorrectly. At 14 and 15 years old, the age group for this, if you wear the wrong shirt and catch grief, you're suicidal, right? I mean, you're in that really emotional state in your life. What is your race? It's bizarre, right? They're asking these questions, but I mean, some of the questions are even worse. I mean, the thing with religion, this is a part of social emotional learning. So just so you know that social emotional learning, and this all feeds in together, it relies on surveys. It can't run without surveys. That's why this parental rights bill is so important. This parental rights bill will make it so that, Danny, if they're going to ask you a survey, you're going to have to opt in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the important part.
You can't ask that as an employer of someone that's applying because businesses could lose their contract with the government for violating that. Why is it that a school can't lose their funding for violating, questions like that? Again, it makes no sense. Melissa, you've got a tough job, and I don't envy you at all. I thank you for your bravery and for everything that you're doing, because it is not easy. And I know you've got a target on you, and I'm so sorry about that. But just know that there's a lot of parents out there that support you, straight, gay. There's a lot. Hang in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're never going to be a prophet in your own land, right? I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. And yeah, I mean, you definitely are fighting the good fight and protecting children, but we have to understand everything we talked about tonight. The surveys make children unsafe. Social emotional learning as a tool for discipline and preventative measures makes children unsafe. At the state level, allowing these SOPs who are predators to have teachers licensed in good standing makes children unsafe. To your point, there are a couple of bills that seek to address this, that we will keep our eye on. Look, we were like Lucy with the football, the last legislative session. I mean, they put up several bills and never really passed it. It was insulting. Medicaid expansion has gone through a breakneck pace here. So as legalizing marijuana, meanwhile, securing our schools and making, schools safer and more productive, quite frankly, for children. I'm not seeing an urgency. And again, we really have to look to the legislature and put pressure on them to do that. But again, I have to tell you, Melissa, yeah, you're super fan here. So let me ask you this, and you're kind of just getting started with this. You may not know, what can a district do to keep social emotional learning out of the classrooms in that district and the surveys?
So right now, what we're looking at is that it's coming from the top, that it's coming from the state. And to your point of using social emotional learning as a behavior modification, as a keeping kids safe program, their training, which I've watched a video of their training says it's not even supposed to be used for that purpose. That's a tiny little part of what social emotional learning is supposed to be used for. So that's not even the purpose that it's there for. Like, they didn't create this for behavior modification. That was not the goal. It was not to keep kids safer. And that's just watching one of their videos, but it's going to be a big challenge because, as you said before, it is everywhere. It is in math. It is in ELA, English. It is in science. It is in social. They have integrated it.
Surveys. And the surveys are. Because that survey I showed you, sorry, that was from science. Those surveys about body hair was from science.
Well, and the problem is we, and I say that collectively, we have kind of just sat back and let it happen. And we've been like, oh, they're in school. It's good. I think COVID shook us all, and I think it woke us all up. And I think that that was the driving force for a lot of people I know to jump in. But to get it out of your district, it's going to be a really big battle, and it cannot happen overnight.
Yeah. It can't happen overnight. It can't happen alone. So, Danny, from your perspective, I mean, you're their worst nightmare at schools, because you will go in and you will really stay on top of, the administrators about stuff. But, the victims in this predatory behavior, they're not going to be my kids. They're not going to be your kid or yours, because they know the children that have the parents that are paying attention all the time and going in there and monitoring. So it's, Title IX school. I mean, help me out. Title III? Title III. Yeah. Title I schools, excuse me. High poverty, et cetera, where you've got one parent, maybe two working parent, they're going to prey upon those children who we used to call them latchkey kids. Mm-hmm. Again, 10 years ago when I was coming home from fourth grade, by myself. No, I'm joking. But they used to call them latchkey kids, and, we kind of fend for ourselves. Danny, that's who they're picking.
It's exactly what I was going to say. My parents were both working. My dad, ran restaurants from, morning to, to night, dinner. My mom worked 2 jobs. And that's the thought that came into my mind is if that was happening now, I would be one of those kids that they were targeting because those parents are struggling to make a living to provide for their families. They're not bad parents. They've just got so much going on. It's hard for them to keep up. And for the rest of us that are fortunate enough to have some time to be able to dig into this stuff, we need to step up. We need to talk to those other parents. We need to let the school know that we're watching. Just because it's not happening to your child doesn't mean that it's not happening. If you find out it's happening to your child, then it's happening to others. It's an obligation. We as adults are what's the word I'm looking for here? It is incumbent on us as adults to protect our children, our future, whether they're our kids or not. If you see a child that's approaching a van and it looks sketchy and something's happening, what are you going to do? You're going to try to save that child. You're going to get the license plate. You're going to do something. You're going to take some action. This is pretty much along those same lines because they are stealing our children from us with some kind of ulterior motive. I shouldn't say some kind. We know what it is.
Yeah.
And it's our job to protect our kids and all the kids in the neighborhood. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always say somebody's got to be a grown-up in the room, right? Somebody has to be that grown-up. And early on, I tell this story because it's not happening anymore because people know better, but people come to me and say, gosh, I really don't want to offend anyone and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or whatever. And I look at them and say, you know what? I'd rather hurt someone's a stranger, mind you, their feelings than for my daughter to look at me in 4 years and say, Mommy, why didn't you do anything? And sadly, there are some parents that I do know that are kicking themselves because they didn't want to make a big deal. They didn't want to jump to conclusions, etc. Well, they, 6 months down the road, it happened to a few others. Not something that's serious, mind you, but concerning stuff. Surveys are one of those things. It's something that's worth making a big deal about. Again, if your children aren't worth fighting for, I don't know what is, right? And we're seeing a lot more parents now, Melissa. You're one of them. Not only come forward and say this isn't right, etc., but actually put their name in the hat and run for office.
Yeah. It's definitely been an interesting and educational year for me, and it'll be another, 4 years of learning just everything that there is, even beyond what I could see from the outside.
Yeah. Well, we've got your back. Definitely. We've got you covered. You're doing the right thing. And parents from all stripes, no matter what, as you said, political background or whatever, they do appreciate this because the stuff we've talked about tonight is just common sense, guys. Right? I mean, this stuff is common sense. Look at the nomenclature they're using of grooming in these expert situations. Look at all the stuff going on. So, guys, I want to thank you very much for speaking out about this. And it's always good to have a parent's perspective too on, how these policies that is in schools and at the state level filter down and actually affect people, parents, families.
Yeah. It's when I have to have a conversation with my child about all the different genders, you can identify as you want. I could care less, but don't force those conversations onto those children. Let kids have their innocence. What's wrong with that? Where are we now that we can't let our children have their youth, their innocence? They don't have it for long. The last thing we need to do as adults is rip it away from them even sooner.
Yeah.
Let them have that piece.
And it's worth remembering, this is the government doing it. It's not just a teacher, Little House on the Prairie. It's the government. The government wants to know your child's sexuality. The government wants to have a chance to separate you from your child. I spoke with Gays Against Groomers the other night, and we had a great conversation with the head of that organization. And I said this, and I've said it for a very long time. The transgender movement, especially in schools, it is a form of conversion therapy. It seeks to kill off gay people in this way. When you're telling children that they're born in the wrong bodies, instead of, first of all, having the conversation is bad enough. But when you're going in there and you're weighing in on it and you're saying, hey, you're born in the wrong body, you should think about changing your gender if you feel like a boy or a girl. What they're really doing is taking children who would be gay, which is fine. And they're saying, well, I mean, it's better off if you're a girl attracted to a boy. So we want to do something about that. And there's treatment options for that. So not only does the transgender movement seek to kill off gay people, it also seeks, obviously, to take the rights away from girls, from women, making them spectators in their own sport. What do you think about what I'm saying here?
There's a lot there.
It's a lot
to unpack. When you're old enough that you make that decision for yourself, God bless you. I don't understand it. I don't understand the process. I feel for you. I know how difficult it was for me to come out. I can only imagine the process for you. But when you're doing that to a child who still doesn't understand why it's important to take a bath, why it's important to eat healthy, why it's important to have a certain lifestyle, to go to bed at a certain time, to grow. When you're trying to have a conversation with a child who doesn't understand the importance of all of that, but you're trying to talk to them about sexuality, there's a reason that, forgive me for saying this, but we go through puberty at a later age, because then our bodies are ready and they're starting to go in that direction, right? We're starting to become adults. That's when that starts to happen. Not when we decide we want to talk about it before then.
Right.
I'm not saying never talk to your child about it. One of the best things we ever did with our daughter is have open conversations, answered her questions, didn't initiate the conversation. She came to us asking us questions. And as much as sometimes I wanted to throw up in the back of my mouth in wanting to,
never easy.
Yeah, to respond to this, we responded honestly. We responded matter-of-factly, and it opened up the ability for us to have honest, sincere conversations when she was ready. That's the point. Right.
And if you're pushing this on children when they are at that puberty age, when they start to form their identities, again, right when it's hard enough to come out anyway. But when you're also implanting that, hey, if you're forming your sexual identity right now and you feel like a girl or whatever, there's been a lot of research in that. Usually that means it's the start of thinking that you may be attracted to someone and do you know what I mean? And then you're saying, oh, okay, there's a surgical way to handle that. It's just.
But they're doing it before puberty. That's the thing. It's not even at the point. It's before, so that a child is getting confused, and someone's out there is going to say, well, not every kid, and some kids, are know at a young age, maybe, probably, but not every child. So if you've got a boy that likes to play with Barbies or a girl that likes to play with Hot Wheels, that doesn't make them gay, lesbian, transgender.
Correct.
It makes them a child that likes to play with whatever toys in front of them.
Yeah.
So give them that time and don't confuse them, so that when they do go to the point of puberty and that awakening, that they're not confused by the whole situation. Well, wait, I thought I was, but I'm not. But I'm attracted to I'm a boy and I'm attracted to a girl, but I was told that I shouldn't be. All of a sudden, you've thrown years of therapy onto that child. Confusion, depression, anxiety, opened up doors to potential suicide down the road. They're creating a mess.
Absolutely. And I, piggybacking off of that, Gays Against Groomers did this amazing piece about the Title IX changes that they wanted to make. And one of the things that they talked about is if you leave these kids alone and you let them go through, not leave them alone, but you get them counseling, you get them the support they need emotionally to deal with these things, that most of the time what happens is they find that they are gay, they are a lesbian, they are, you know, or they're just a straight kid, you know, and but if you let them, because it's okay to be straight too.
Danny, you got to tell the story about.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
They'll there.
I never thought in my wildest dreams these words would ever come out to, you know, in talking to my daughter. We were talking about things and she's saying, well, would, you know, what if I'm lesbian? What if I'm bisexual? What if and this is what 2 years ago. She's 14. And I said, well, what if you're straight? She goes, well, I mean, I don't know. Well, I said, you know what, baby? We'll love you just as much if you're straight as if you're gay or bi. Where? I'm sitting there going, what world am I living in that those words literally just came out of my mouth? It's insane.
This is Wacko World. This is exactly what you're talking about. By the way, you're looking at a presentation given by Ellen Essick. This woman is in charge of crafting the healthy living standards for all students in North Carolina. Sex ed is under her aegis. In fact, she just put up a very controversial program now that the DPI is going to pay $630,000 for. We are the taxpayer that pushes this garbage. But yeah, so if you want to play with a doll when you're what's this kid, 3 years old, that you're trans positive. By the way, works at the DPI. She's in charge of our science standards, our healthy living standards, and sex ed standards.
I mean, heaven forbid you have a little boy that wants to become a good dad. Don't we want our sons to be, you know, the partners of their spouses as they raise babies? We want our boys to know how to do these things and to not be helpless. We want our girls to be able to defend themselves. You know, I played with GI Joes and I love superheroes. Like I hate princesses.
Except Princess Leia, right?
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah, right.
Of course.
It's the Danishes.
Exactly. Exactly. But what I'm saying is, like, there's no need to be putting these kids in boxes. We are who we are, and we're all uniquely made to have different preferences. We need to encourage these things and make them a positive thing instead of saying, well, you're trans friendly. No, you're learning how to be a good dad. Or you're learning how to use a monkey wrench, you know, whatever. Like, we should be promoting the positive part of that, not placing them into a box. Like, we're all about, we want to make sure that we're recognizing everybody is amazing and special and wonderful. But at the same time, we're saying, well, but if you're playing with a doll and you're a boy, then that isn't the way that it's supposed to be. We've been hearing for years, like, you can't say that boys can't play with dolls. You can't say that girls can't play with trucks. Like, can you or can't you? Like, is there a, you know?
Well, apparently, if you're a boy that likes to play with dolls, then you should be a girl. But then, wait a minute. If you're a girl, you don't have to play with dolls. You could play with trucks. All of a sudden, your mind explodes because you're like, wait, what? Because I'm a boy that likes to play with dolls, so I should be a girl. But now that I'm a girl that likes to play with dolls, I don't have to be a girl that likes to play with dolls. I can be a girl that likes to play with trucks, which means then I should be a boy.
Wait a minute.
So much confusion. And we have kids in middle school who they're developing. Like, I've been in education for years, and child development, their brains, there are grown individuals whose brains are not fully developed. I believe it's 25 when your brain is fully developed. And so to have this confusion is actually pretty normal for a lot of kids. I think we all can admit we have some sort of body dysmorphia. Like, there are things about my body I would love to change. that working out just is not doing. I need to go over to your gym, but but I think that we're shoving this on these kids, and it's already a chaotic and confusing time, and we need to take that pressure back off of them. We really do.
Right. And right. I mean, we haven't even gotten to the literacy crisis that we have in the state. I mean, it's epic. There's so many crises. I mean, it's difficult. But by the way, what we've talked about tonight solves none of them and makes all of them worse. When you're taking away classroom time, instruction time for this garbage, it's also reducing the ability of children to function. Now, there's been many studies that show, and this makes perfect sense, that when children learn how to read, I mean, they theorize there's a critical window at 3rd grade, but when they, learn how to read, learn how to do math, the literacy at a younger age, that those children, they followed a series of children in these studies, they don't have the rate of misbehavior. And it makes sense, because if you're not really proficient in what you're supposed to be doing in school, right? Reading and writing, you're going to get into trouble. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, we need to hard target having these schools to perform what they're supposed to be doing. And that's why you ran, Melissa, is like, look, let's get out of the business of a gender clinic and a psych ward. And you've been very, you're someone, the reason why I love you, and we've disagreed on some things with discipline. I'm pretty much of a, and you're like, well, wait a minute, let's do it this way. And so discipline is your thing, and you've weighed in on it a lot. But this social emotional learning has no place on the menu. Seclusion rooms, very controversial. They don't. This doesn't, and you have two different extremes here, right? So, and there's got to be a middle ground. Just punishment has to be the way forward.
Yeah, there has to be consistent consequences for actions, and I think that that's something that our new set of board members are really looking to do, like improving academics. We want accountability for our kids to be able to have that literacy, but we also know that we have to improve these behaviors because the behaviors are a distraction to learning.
Exactly.
So it's finding that middle ground, finding that place where we can all we can support the kids in the way that they need, whether it is through consistent discipline or whether, whatever it is, we need to meet our kids where they are.
This probably speaks a lot about the reasons why kids cannot focus and learn. 7.51, that's almost double the national average inside of North Carolina schools. That needs to be dealt with. It needs to be dealt with quickly. And we've gone over. I knew we would, but we've gone way over. So thank you both for contributing to this conversation in your unique ways. And it's incumbent upon all of us to get involved. I don't care what you've done before. If you've never even weighed in on the topic, start sharing things on Facebook, start talking to your neighbors, but absolutely start talking to your state reps. Tell them what you expect from them. Senator Mike Lee from your area has done, I think, a pretty good job this legislative session. I think he's definitely taken to heart what parents want in your area. They want safer schools, and he's really led this legislation with the parental rights bill, and I hats off to him.
Definitely.
All right, guys. Well, have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
You both of you are truly some of the bravest women that I know in doing what you do and everything that you're facing down, and you're an inspiration. And for anyone out there, I just want to say, these are probably the least homophobic women you'll ever meet. If you ever want to accuse them of such, they're not. You're wasting air and oxygen at that point. You both are amazing, and I appreciate everything you guys are doing.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you. I know. Oh, I'm going to cry. He's just trying to do this because he wants me to come into Hot Works and take a few classes so he can laugh at me, stand outside the glass.
I'd record it and put it on social media. I wouldn't laugh.
Oh,
Just share
I
it.
believe you would. I believe you would, definitely. All right, guys. Well, have a wonderful evening. We're going to continue the conversation and continue watching and monitoring all these things.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.